Hey everyone, it's Mariah Seacrest Comer, and tonight we are asking the question, is it a good idea to ever set aggressive fitness goals? I'm really excited to talk about this topic tonight because I think there's a lot that we need to consider when doing goal setting in general for fitness, and specifically when it comes to taking on a pretty hefty challenge. Now, with the advent of things like Pinterest and social media and beautiful, wonderful, incredibly looking airbrushed abs and glory moments, we get to see all of kind of the good things that come about from people who do really aggressive fitness challenges. And by aggressive, I just mean something that takes a lot of work, like maybe a CrossFit challenge or a race of some type, whether that's a triathlon or a marathon or half marathon, something of that nature, obstacle courses. So with the advent of social media and really getting to see kind of all those finish line moments, if you will, all of the results of that effort, setting aggressive fitness goals has become kind of sexy. They come with bragging rights. There's something that feels really, really cool and badass and powerful about having a really difficult goal and then nailing it, right? So they can kind of have a little bit of a lure to them. So I want to talk about not only the process of goal setting and whether or not they're fun to do, because of course they make you feel good, but are they actually a good idea for you? So my answer may or may not surprise you. I mean, at first blush, of course, it sounds like a great idea to set a big goal and to be able to accomplish it. I'm all about ambition and being better in your life. However, if you have followed me for a while in anything that I teach, you know that I'm actually usually in favor of a more sustainable, gentle approach. So my answer to the question, should you ever set aggressive fitness goals, it really depends on where you're at in your own relationship with exercise. 9 times out of 10, I am going to suggest that setting a steep, ambitious goal is actually not in your best interest if you are still getting on track with being consistent with exercise. This may seem counterintuitive to you. You may think the structure of a really aggressive goal might be something that's good for you. And I agree with the concept. I am all about structure when trying to implement something new and create and really entrench a new habit. Structure is awesome. However, you can create structure with much more manageable, sustainable goals. Here's the thing. Our brains really don't like to take in too much new change to our habits all at once. When we do that, we are actually self-sabotaging our likelihood and our probability of sustaining those changes over time. So that being said, if your goal is just to be consistent with exercise, to get back on track, to maybe lose a few pounds and lose them for good, I'm actually going to suggest that you're better off with a more moderate approach. However, so some of you have heard me say that before. A lot of you, if you've heard much of my teachings at all, have heard me say that. But I do actually think there's a time and a place where it makes great sense to add a more aggressive fitness goal to your regime. I've done it myself. So even though most of my workouts most of the time are fairly moderate, I mean, I'll do intervals, I'll do weightlifting, but I usually don't do more than about 30 minutes, usually on just an average season, right? But I have had seasons where I wanted to push more aggressively. I've done 2 full marathons, so obviously there was something attractive about that to me that I wanted to finish, and I'm glad I did them. So again, you have to gauge with where you're at. If you're just starting out, first of all, my primary concern is that you're not self-sabotaging yourself and overwhelming yourself so that you're not going to continue to be exercising long-term over time. Of course, there's always as well the consideration that if you are diving into something that you're training a lot for and don't really have a solid physical base, of course, you're going to be more likely to set yourself up for injury as well. Where I do think it makes sense is if you started to get some consistency in your fitness habits. So I'm going to suggest if you have been fairly consistent with your exercise, it doesn't mean necessarily every day, but if you've been consistent and you feel like you're really developing a habit if you've been doing that for maybe 6 to 12 months, you might benefit from doing something a little bit more ambitious. What I want you to look out for, though, is I want you to look at your reason for doing it. I want you to also, secondly, set some parameters around the goal itself. So if you're going to start something more extreme, one, I want it to be a temporary regimen, but two, I want it to have a long-term driving force behind it. So what I mean by that is if you're just looking to lose 20 pounds to fit into a dress for an event, that doesn't really have a lot of long-term incentive behind it. The reward is very short-lived, and what I'm afraid of is going to happen for you, and what I've seen happen is you're going to lose that weight quick, you'll be excited, but then you're going to actually associate all of fitness and health and taking care of yourself and working out with that heck of a lot of work that you had to put into it. You're very quickly going to fatigue yourself, right? So if you have a long-term goal attached to it, then you might actually really benefit from a short-term regimen. And I'm going to suggest on top of that that not only is it a long-term goal, but it's a long-term mental, emotional, spiritual goal. I'm fine with you having short-term physical goals, but I want there to be some long-term payoff to it, okay? So maybe that, maybe a physical goal for you is to compete in a bodybuilding competition, but it's so not just because you feel like you need to look that way to have approval or to be fit or to be healthy, but I just talked to someone from work this week who was doing that because she wanted to prove it to herself that it was something that she could do and then take that confidence and carry it with her in other realms of her life, not because she felt like she had to look that way forever. And I'm totally on board with that. Even if there's a physical goal, I want there to be a really long-term emotional, spiritual, or mental driving force behind it. For me, this was marathon running. Running was not something that ever came easily to me. I just wasn't very good at it. I was never overweight or anything. I just, I did way more than I weigh now at one point, but running was just super hard for me. But I also thought it would be really fun if I ever got good at it. So I just kept trying, and eventually I got to the point where running marathons made sense for me. I was raising money for a cause I believed in. I had this wonderful team that was supporting me, and I made some great friendships through it. And I have gained so much out of that because of my ability to overcome something that I used to not be good at. I've carried that confidence with me into business, into learning new skills at work, into just standing up for myself, realizing that I am capable of creating change in my life and in the lives of others around me. So that's what I mean by having that long-term driving force, even if it's for a short-term regimen, because that's something that you're going to take with you all the time, not ever believing for a second that you have to continue that training in order to be healthy or to be good enough or to look good enough. I certainly don't want to continue a marathon training schedule all year, every year. That's not it at all. So those are my words of advice. Again, if you are just getting started with getting consistent and working your way back into fitness, I'm going to suggest that you set those baby goals, set yourself up for success. But if you feel like you're going to get a good mental boost of confidence, you're going to prove something to yourself emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and you've been consistent with your exercise for 6 to 12 months at least, you might be ready for a challenge. So I'm really excited to hear what you think about this. I'm excited to hear what big fitness challenges you've taken on in the past and whether or not you've completed them and whether or not you've been glad that you've done it. And if you haven't done one, I'm excited to hear at this point if you think you're going to, or if you know that for you, right now is the time to just work on building that base. So that's all I've got for you tonight. A reminder, I would love to share more of my insider secrets for self-care for entrepreneurs with day jobs, people who don't have a lot of time for themselves, but there are really practical ways that we can take care of ourselves, not only for our own well-being, but also, it comes back around to having enough energy to invest in the things that are important to us, to keep up with our own ambitions, to really be able to show up in the best way. You can download that free self-care guide at elevateselfcare.com. Also, keep exciting goodies, meal planning, and making meal planning a little bit easier, a little bit more doable, and less expensive, which is always a plus. So be on the lookout for that. I'll be sharing more about that in the upcoming Tuesday night chats, as well as on Facebook and in my email group. If you do download that Elevate Self-Care Guide, you will be the absolute first to know. So please sign up, and I will see you next week. Take care.